All right, we're back here with some Black Ops 7 gameplay. Well, not really going to be playing a whole lot. Going to be talking about stuff. And then Diablo 4 Season 11 starts next week on Thursday instead of Tuesday at a weird time. So I'm expecting some reveal, right? So let's talk about BO7 though. So BO7, we're getting a whole bunch of crap. Not to say the game's crap, but we're getting a lot of stuff. So multiplayer, we're getting new maps, new guns. We're getting the weekly challenges. We're getting a little bit of nerf and buffs and changes and stuff to some of the attachments for assault rifles, SMGs, and LMGs. I don't remember the whole details. And then we're getting a new score streak added. We're technically getting new attachments and other stuff like that for the weekly challenges when they change over. And then for zombies, we're getting the new main survival map, new main map, and then a new survival map. We're actually getting some changes so that survival maps look like, at least the farm. I don't know about the exit 115, but they're going to have 10 challenges, which are like the little, interact with the computer. It says kill 100 zombies or whatever, and you can get a reward. So, new thing to play with to see if I can use it to actually not die as much as on zombies. Later in the season, we're getting a whole bunch of new alternate ammo types, new field upgrades, stuff like that. And then for endgame, we're getting changes to endgame, new exotic seals. I don't remember exactly what's going on with endgame. Oh, I think a new boss, right? The Origins robot. But yeah, so in general, BO7 for me, from what I understand of the game and like how I am able to try to play some of it, none of it sounds bad. Like all of it sounds good. Like sure, you can make the argument that why wasn't all this in there at launch, but it at least sounds like it has it's more content than it usually would have been for like a drip feed, right? And especially because the multiplayer you have, I think I think we're getting 2 maps at season start, and then a few more like halfway through the season. I'm assuming. Again, multiple guns like ballistic knife, crossbow modes. Getting changes to zombies. The mystery box can be like shared now if you melee it. Curse mode is actually getting harder. Director mode is going to be easier. But the thing I want to focus on is the quote unquote accessibility, or I guess playability of BO7. Getting slight buffs actually. So I don't remember exactly what the change was, but there was a change in the high contrast mode in the patch notes. I'm like, wait, so y'all are buffing accessibility settings, right? And I looked down a bit later in the audio settings, or audio features, changes, I guess, under zombies. It doesn't list it in multiplayer or like general audio or anything. It's just under like zombies, then audio. They're adding some changes to audio. So first thing I noticed was they're adding voice lines to picking up the permanent perks. So that way, I guess you'll be told like, hey, permanent perk or whatever, exotic perk or whatever it's called, eternal perk. So okay, that is legitimately a move toward more accessibility because you are conveying visual information to, a blind person. Granted, it's sort of not inherently like, oh yeah, we're doing it for accessibility. Like they're probably doing it just for a unifying thing of like, oh well, all the pickups have a sound or have a voice line. Sorry, my brother's talking downstairs. So they're probably doing that just to unify that, but it does lead to better accessibility essentially. So the other thing that I want to point out is they're changing some voice lines or pinging. So I guess there are certain things where like you couldn't ping before. Now there should be able to be pinged. They're also adding voice lines or changing voice lines for certain pinging when you hit up on the D-pad. So I'm hoping that the new voiceover lines and some of these quote unquote changes to pinging, changes to dialogue or whatever for pinging. I'm hoping it'll be more descriptive. It'll essentially function more similarly to Cold War. Because right now it's a bit tricky for ping to work as well as Cold War does or did. So here's the thing, like I would still like, of course, I don't expect Charek to see this video and like, oh yeah, let's just do this. Like, they're doing other stuff. But if they did add any of these changes, that'd be freaking helpful and fantastic. But for starters, I still want to reiterate, it would be great if we had screen readers or text-to-speech reading all the text in the game, right? All the menu text. Whenever there's a prompt, hey, press and hold square to start the raging inducer. Rampage inducer. Hate when I accidentally do that. Or press and hold square to, I don't know, plant the bomb and search. Like, it'd be nice to have that visual information. However, I don't expect it to happen. Of course, it's hard to implement text-to-speech into an engine in the middle of updates, right? But that being said, if it's possible, great. If not, can we just have the menus not loop into oblivion? So, and I mentioned this before. Hold on.
Do something about that press, why don't you?
Nope. Bad idea. Okay, I have to wait for the thing to regenerate. Anyway, so the thing I want to get at is this, is the menus being a pain. Which in itself isn't the worst thing in the world. It'd be great if the menus didn't loop, right? That's one thing. The next thing that would be beneficial to multiplayer and zombies if you're blind or visually impaired is either A, make an option to lock your aim so you can't accidentally aim up or down. Or B, a way to center the aim for you. So I know, like, sighted people, and I used to do this as well when I could see. You would essentially always have your sights centered as to where you think the next enemy will be, right? Then at least where the torso is going to be, right? So for center mass. Blind people can't do that. Now, the best thing I can think of is just keep your aim, like when you respawn, that's your default aim, right? And just keep your aim always locked at that, like you can't aim up or down. Now, what does this mean? That you can't, like, oh, there's a guy right above, or like above where I'm aiming, let me aim up? Like, yeah, you can't really do stuff like that. But I can't think of a way to implement aim assist and helping blind people aim without compromising, the integrity, I guess, if you want to call it that, of, like, fairness, I suppose. Because if it was a situation where it was like, hey, within 20 or within 10 or 20 meters, if your screen visually has an enemies anywhere, it'll snap to their torso. Like, if it was like that, it would be kind of nutty and essentially give everybody aimbot, right? So it wouldn't be fair. It'd just be abusable and not fair. However, there are ways that they can add sounds to help us aim without seeing. Now, it won't be perfect, but it'll be better than nothing. For example, the tracker perk could have a sound tied to it whenever it auto pings an enemy in multiplayer. That way you'll have double confirmation to know, hey, I'm literally looking at someone, try to take them out, right? Apparently there is a target finder optic, which for those who were not around during Black Ops 2 days, target finder optic essentially was when you aim down your sights, it's a giant red diamond around every enemy who wasn't wearing cold-blooded. And when your crosshair or your sight was on the enemy, it was blue. And when your sight was on them, it would change red and have a pretty distinct sound, like a buzzing sound, to know, hey, it's changing color and there's a new sound, shoot. Now, if the target finder works like that here in BO7, that'll help, right? A lot. That'll help a lot. That being said, they could have a thing where, actually, I thought of? They have the enemy's red name appears when you're looking at them in hipfire or ADS, right? Within a certain range. What they could do, actually, they could add a sound to the red name indicator pop-up. Now, of course, that would be blocked by cold-blooded and by teammates, but for those who weren't running cold-blooded and who weren't teammates, that might actually be a decent enough sound indicator, like, hey, that's an enemy, right? Sorry about that. My alarm's for waking me up for work. Anyway, so there's a couple ideas there for buffing accessibility and playability for multiplayer and zombies. The thing is, it's infinitely easier. Well, not infinitely, it's much easier to quote unquote make accessible a PvE thing, right? Single player games, PvE games. Competitive shooter type games are drastically difficult. I believe it was like 2 or 3 months ago at this point. I'm not exactly sure when, but it was the first multiplayer game to allow high contrast mode in competitive or whatever. So like, it's a big deal that they let that happen. But again, so Treyarch's always been more receptive, in my opinion, to feedback that I've provided over the years, or other blind people or other disabled people, and for that matter. For those who weren't aware, during Blackout back in 2018, 2019, there was a player who had hand issues and they couldn't keep manually clicking the sprint. And they added a whole setting to make it so that you could always sprint. Now, I don't expect like a whole setting, hey, here's text-to-speech, screen reader, reading all the menus, and recentering your aim for you. I don't expect it, but these are just ideas. It would be nice to at least know that they're gonna try, or at least they've thought about it, right? At least we've thought about it, because then it's there in their head, right? So hopefully, I just hope that with the advent of them adding like new voice lines and new changes to the pinging mechanic and new voice lines to the pings, as well as a couple other things with that change, they did something to the high contrast mode to make it more better or something. Like to me, it sounds like they're more receptive to like, hey, we have some accessibility stuff, we're gonna try and change it or make it better, right? Now, again, making games fully accessible to fully blind people, probably one of the hardest disabilities to overcome for gaming design, but I think so far BO7 is not the worst one, right? Like, the menu structures are fixable, right? As long as none of the menus loop, it's not a big deal. As long as there's a way to reset your aim or lock your aim or something, so that you can always be confident you're aiming at like the general height of a torso. Generally, it won't always like snap to the torso or whatever, but at least it'll like, hey, it's reset again, so you can not worry about buying a wall weapon in zombies, or shooting an enemy in multiplayer, right? And so those are the menus, the resetting the aim, text-to-speech, hopefully eventually, maybe. And aside from that, the other thing I could think of is mostly like adding options to zombies. So for Black Ops 4, might be the most accessible zombie simply because they had all the options. Now, don't get me wrong, BO4 had its faults, but the best thing I can give that game was the options and the modes allowed for players to have their choice how to play. That is the whole point of accessibility. The more options you give people, the more they're allowed to play how they want to play, or in my case and other disabled players' cases, how they would technically need to play. Okay, and this sort of spirals off the fact that directed mode, standard mode, and cursed mode effectively are morphing into your casual, normal, hardcore, and realistic modes from BO4. Now, I don't expect them to take directed mode and be like, hey, we're going to put all the accessibility crap in here for disabled people and new people who've never played zombies, and all you guys can all like complete the Easter egg. I don't expect directed mode to be an accessibility mode. And to be honest, the ideal thing would be options and features and settings so that standard was accessible to everyone. And directed will just be there for people who really want to do the Easter eggs easier. right? Or but I don't know. It just I don't see why we couldn't add options in the game when you're picking your standard survival, Ashes of the Damned farm, whatever. Just have the option. Oh, hey, I guess we're done. Just have the option, powers on by default, right? Or have the option of, zombies are walkers at all time. They don't ever run. Like those two things alone would probably help playability for blind people and other disabled groups, right? Now, like blindness is my main focus because that's the one I'm living with, but I'm also rocking a heavily impaired right hand, which doesn't really affect COD that much. It does affect fighting games though, and Diablo. But yeah, I don't see why. Like, okay, here's the thing I want to get at. BO4 had many faults, but none of the faults were giving people options on how they want to play. Okay, was it a fault to remove double tap, remove jug, and like replace them with weaker perks? You only have 4 perks max. Like sure, but and especially the specialist. Like I think if they took out the specialist or like made it so you didn't spawn with it or something, like you had to do something to earn it, like. I feel like BO4 could, like a couple changes to BO4, people would look back on that with more fond memories. But I don't know. The my thoughts are a little scattered. Just trying to think of it all in one go. But yeah, I think BO7 has the potential to be as accessible as BO4 was, but it's just a matter of if Treyarch, here's my feedback or reads an acquaintance of mine. They have a document outlined in a Google Doc, and it's like he and I are the only 2 people I know who've like really tried. Actually, no, there's a third. There's a third dude. Steve Saylor helped work with Raven Studios on the campaign for BO6. But the point being, like, COD has been trying to do some more accessibility as of late, and I hope that trend keeps going. I think they can get it done. I don't see why they couldn't. It's just a matter of getting the feedback to them, and hopefully they implement. And if they don't, then at the very least they acknowledge they understand. Okay, because that's part of the tricky part with accessibility is like getting developers to realize, like, look, even if you can't get it in now, at least making them aware of, like, yeah, we can do this eventually. Maybe not right now, but we're at least aware of the situation, and that would help open the door to be like, okay, let's get a blind consultant in, right? Or a deaf consultant, or just an accessibility design consultant of some kind. Because a lot of game devs, they may not have resources to get it done, or may not be aware of where to start. So my NVDA is being weird. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this sort of TED Talk, I guess. Not much gameplay because I just wanted to focus on the update and what's happening with BO7. And again, I do hope Treyarch can implement some of these again. Since text-to-speech or screen reader functionality, I'm not expecting it. So best case scenario would be if the user interface could be limited so that it does not loop. Like for example, right here, it loops, right? But then if I go down to here and then go left and right, it doesn't loop. Like if that could be consistent so that nothing loops. This is the zombies menu, but this could expand to all the menus in my opinion. Just nothing loops. Like why? Like what do things have to loop? I don't understand. And then again, way to center your aim, and then those 2 things alone will probably help playability just on a base level in multiplayer and zombies. But for zombies specifically, because I love zombies, the next thing I'd say would be adding sounds to wall weapon locations, and probably any interactable in the game should have a sound. I just found a sound that was chompy, I guess. I didn't know chompy made a sound. The rampage just has a sound, sounds nice. The ammo crates, I think, have sounds. Why can't we have a little sound for the box? Like even if the mystery box, like even if the locations don't have a sound, that's fine. But like maybe the box itself has a little, just it plays a little jingle, right? The little mystery box sound. And all opening the box does is it plays a sound just louder, right? Just so that it's at least locatable by a blind person. Like I fully think there's ways for them to make things more accessible, like conveying visual information to blind people, conveying auditory information to deaf people, making things better for people with hand impairments. There's fully ways for them to do this. It's just a matter of them being aware of how, maybe not the best way to do it, but at least ideas on how to do it. So again, hope you all enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Like, did you make it to the end of the video? First off. Secondly, if you did, let me know what your thoughts on the subjects. And I guess there's a new YouTube feature where you guys can liking, commenting, and like doing all the interaction stuff does help boost it, I guess. But I guess there's a new way to do it where it's hype or something, where if you guys hype a video, it'll like boost it more or something. So I don't know. I'd appreciate if anyone who does encounter this video, if you can do all the interaction stuff, the hype, like, comment, whatever. Just the more eyes and ears we can get on these games, or not these games, but on these videos and feedback and stuff, the more likely we can hopefully see some improvement. So thanks again for watching. BO7 Season 1 starts today, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to play it, obviously. Season 11 of Diablo 4 starts next week, so that's fun to look forward to. And besides that, there's not much news in the fighting game scene for the games I like. So that'll be it for me for now. Thanks again for watching, or listening, I guess. And see you guys next time.